Hey everyone, it's Raghu back with Mindrolling, and I have now an older friend because we met a few years ago and did a wonderful podcast, Sadhvi, Bhagawati, Saraswati, who is spends most of her time in India, right? You still spend most of your time in India?
I do. I live in Rishikesh on the banks of the sacred Ganga River, the Ganges River, in the lap of the Himalayas, or the Himalayas, as we say here.
And I, of course, have spent time there myself, and I have to count Sadhvi ji to be very, very fortunate to have this.
Yes.
Because being by that river in that particular town is quite something. So, which reminds me, did you go with your guru to the Mela this past year?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Okay. We were in the Mahakumbh Mela for half of January and all of February. We were there for 45 days. It was extraordinary.
Okay, I got to hear all about it. You had a camp there and you were in the middle of it all?
We did. We had a huge camp there, and it was actually, I think, probably the only fully eco-friendly, sustainable camp there.
Oh, really?
Because, well, the entire Mela is, as you know, makeshift. What they do, and just for any listeners who don't know what we're talking about, it's the massive Mahakumbh Mela that just finished in India in a very sacred place called Prayagraj, which is the confluence of the Ganga, the Yamuna, and the Saraswati rivers. And once every 12 years, there's a huge festival that takes place there. And in the dry riverbed, when the river has receded in the wintertime, this enormous spiritual festival gets erected. And so, yes, we had a beautiful camp. It was an eco-friendly camp, no styrofoam, which sadly a lot of the camps use, but we didn't. Ours was just 100% bamboo, jute, straw, things that were really sustainable, really eco-friendly, plastic-free, styrofoam-free. And it was huge and extraordinary. And yeah, we were packed for 45 straight days.
Really? Wow. And food was going on and people were being
constantly
fed.
Food was going on, sleeping was going on. We actually had the largest, what's called a pandal, meaning like a very large tent that they erect for big spiritual programs. And ours was the largest.
Really?
And we had all of these programs planned for throughout the entire Mela. And then a couple of weeks in, we realized that the Mela was just getting bigger and bigger, and so many people had no place to sleep, and they would come and they would hang out in our tented area in the afternoons and into the evenings, and we realized they had nowhere to sleep. And so we ended up turning our tent into sleeping quarters for thousands and thousands and thousands of people a night. We ended up canceling all of these functions just so that we could give people a place to sleep and to stay.
And feeding them too?
Yeah. Food was there.
Wow.
Every day.
So
hot kitchery for everybody.
Yeah. I was also there. And not this year, many years ago, actually. And somebody, a friend of mine had brought a camcorder. And then thing started and everything. And she goes, I can't do this because that's making everything objectified for me.
Yes.
And I said, okay, I got no problem with that. Give it to me. And I got it. And I would walk around from time to time and, like the procession. So everybody, there's a procession on the most important hour that is absolutely of most karmic benefit. So people want to go in and take their dip in the river at that time. But they have rules, there's different sects, and some get to go first. And the first ones are the Naga Babas. They're called naked Babas. They have nothing, and they just exist on that, walking around India. I mean, it's pretty amazing. They are the first, so I got there with my camera, and I saw the procession, which included people doing sadhus doing, different practices as part of their sadhana. And anyhow, all of that, I'm saying this is kind of, I'm sorry, Sadhvi, it's an ad for this film that we made.
No problem. It's beautiful. Everyone should experience the Kumbh Mela.
Yeah. Anyhow, you can see some of what goes on in this incredible movie about one of our several mentors in India when we were with Neem Karoli Baba, K.C. Tiwari. It's called the Samadhi of K.C. Tiwari because he was an adept, really. And we were there with him, and so that was part of the film. So you can see that. Okay, it's called Brilliant Disguise, everybody. You can get it on all of the... Yeah. It's really
the Kumbh. They had 670 million people this year.
Really? Now, I always never believed them, but I was there too, and I know it's over a couple of months.
It's over 40. Yeah, it's over 45 days.
Yeah.
It's full moon of January to new moon in February.
Shiva.
And it's extraordinary, but a lot of people actually stay the entire time. So yeah, it's by far many, many, many times the largest gathering of humanity on Earth. And you know what's amazing though is there's no violence. There's no rapes, there's no murders, there's no anybody, beating anybody up. It's just people who are devoted and in love, and people are walking tens of kilometers just to get in because all of the roads have been closed to enable movement of the pedestrians. And so anybody who comes in on a bus or a rickshaw or a train or even their own car, unless they were, a VVIP who had some kind of special entrance, anybody else has to walk from where the buses, the trains, the rickshaws, the taxis leave. And it's tens of kilometers. And nobody's complaining, nobody's frustrated, everybody's just chanting the divine name. And it's such a beautiful lesson, actually, about what happiness really comes from, because we're so attached to the comfort and the luxury and things going my way. And, your travel is good if there's no hiccups. And here are these people carrying their possessions on their head, walking and walking. Many of them have no idea where they will sleep. Many of them have no idea where they're going to eat, but they're filled with such gratitude that they have gotten an opportunity to come to this holy land at this time. And it's just, and you see people of every age and every walk of life. And the only emotional state is gratitude. Nobody's saying, oh my God, the traffic. Oh my God, it took this long. Oh my God, it's so hot. Oh my God, my feet hurt.
I think there's a few Westerners, Sadhvi. I think there's a few Westerners. I mean, quite a number of Westerners go there as well. Nowhere, of course, like the Indian population. But I would bet you some of them Westerners were complaining.
Well, yes, absolutely. I was not
We are used to
I was not
complaining.
speaking about the Western visitors who come in, but more about
the
the
people.
Indians, the devotees who are coming. But interestingly about the Westerners, what I saw, because our camp is always filled with people from all over the world, is gratitude is contagious, and joy is contagious, and acceptance is contagious. And when you are surrounded in an ocean of people who their entire mental focus is on connection with the divine, on having this sacred, holy dip, the impact of that is so much that it impacts all of the Westerners as well. I mean, all of the Westerners who were with us, even we had so many people who ended up wandering off into the Mela, getting lost, getting stuck, coming back 24 hours later. And even in those cases, nobody grumbled, nobody complained. Everybody just said, oh my God, what a once in a lifetime experience. And it was a really, really beautiful, beautiful occasion.
That's so great.
So that was Jan and Feb of this year. Yes.
Yeah. Again, very fortunate. I do remember the loudspeakers calling out people's names. So-and-so's lost, and you go to where? Yeah.
Yes.
I remember all that.
Yes.
Oh, boy. So, yes, you have put together a new book, Coming Home to Yourself. We should talk about that a little bit. Actually, it's maybe the very, very beginning where you describe. Oh, by the way, I was going to say the camp was under the auspices of
our ashram, Parmarth Niketan.
Parmarth Niketan, which is that's the
ashram that I live at in Rishikesh.
And it's a very well-known ashram, and many Westerners gravitate towards that ashram. And
it's one of the biggest spiritual institutions in all of India. It's the largest in Rishikesh. And we have a lot of people from the West, from all over. We host the annual International Yoga Festival there every year in March that draws people of up to 100 countries. One year we even had 101 countries represented.
Oh, that's great. So tell me, this is something I don't know. Who started it?
Who started what? The ashram?
Yeah.
So the ashram Parmarth Niketan was founded actually in 1942 by a very revered saint named Swami Shukdevananji Maharaj. And it has been going since 1942. It's in the tradition of the Shankaracharya. And the leadership of it has passed down through various swamis, various religious masters. And my guru has been the head there since the early 1980s. So, and he was the head pretty much from when he came in the 70s, but officially from the early 80s.
And his name?
Swami Chidanand Saraswati ji. Chidanand Saraswati ji, yes.
Yeah, and he's beautiful. I have not met him, but I've seen some of the videos.
Yeah, he's an extraordinary being.
So anyhow, you got to tell this story it's in the introduction to the book, which is your first satsang.
Yes. Okay, sure.
That is a good story and full of different...
yes, full of the play of the guru. Yes. So just rewinding a bit prior to that for people who don't know how someone who doesn't look Indian, doesn't sound Indian, ended up living in India. I went to India at the age of 25, almost 30 years ago, as a student. I was in the middle of getting my PhD in pediatric neuropsychology. I had graduated undergrad from Stanford. I came quite literally from Hollywood. That's where my first book, my memoir, was called Hollywood to the Himalayas.
Yes, and we did a
The
lovely
Himalayas.
podcast about that. Anybody? You
Yes, we
can go-
did. It was
It'll
beautiful.
probably be linked up in the show notes. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So, so I came from this world of having everything that we are told you need to be happy. The privilege, the prosperity, the education, the opportunity, etc. And yet something was missing, as those of us who may seem to have everything on the outside and yet still feel empty on the inside realize. And here I was in the middle of getting a PhD, and I was an avid traveler. So to travel was really common for me, but I didn't know anything about India. And I went actually quite reluctantly, not knowing anything about it. The only piece that I knew about India that made me happy to go was I was a very strict vegetarian since childhood.
Oh, yeah.
And having traveled throughout Europe and England and across the US and in South America, as a strict vegetarian in places where you don't speak the language, it was really difficult. And you would find, chicken in things and fish in things and eggs in things. And I had learned that Indian restaurants were the one place that I could be really sure that I wasn't going to get any kind of funny stuff in my food. So when India was suggested, I agreed just because I thought, well, at least I'll be able to
eat
happily. Exactly.
That's far out.
And yet the universe had a bigger plan. And when I got to Rishikesh, I had this extraordinary experience of being truly in the presence of the divine. And I was not a religious person. I was not someone who identified as spiritual. I was a scientist. I was an academic. I was a student. And yet suddenly I was gifted with this incredible experience of being in this omnipresent, pervasive presence of the divine. And it literally knocked me to the ground and had tears pouring out of my eyes and made me know that this was where I was meant to be. So fast forward.
Were you traveling alone when you went to India?
No, I was married. That was where, my husband had wanted to go to India. And that was where we ended up in India because he wanted to go. I agreed because I was a vegetarian and thought, well, at least I'll eat happily. But yeah, he was the one who had wanted to go. And I had this incredible experience, knew I was meant to stay. Originally, of course, I had thought that meant to stay meant both of us because he was actually on a spiritual path and had been looking for a guru and looking for an ashram. But his dharma was something different. My dharma was something different. And so we ended up going our separate dharmic ways. And he came back and he's married. He has kids. He has a beautiful, beautiful, successful life. So it all worked out perfectly. But if you fast forward, maybe 8 years, 9 years, something like that, after I had that first experience on the banks of Ganga, I stayed back, and 8, 9 years later, we're sitting in my guru's garden in the evening after the beautiful light ceremony, the arti, which is a beautiful sacred waving of lamps and light and singing and prayers and mantras and chanting on the banks of the Ganges River that we do every night. And we would gather in his garden and people would come for blessings, they would come for his darshan, to see him, to have him see them. And sometimes they'd have questions. And on this particular night, there was a large group that had come in from abroad, and they asked a question. And he says, Sadhviji. And I wait, because I think it's Sadhviji, comma, and that he's going to follow it up with some instruction. And he's going to say, you know, please go and tell the kitchen that all of these people will have dinner. Or please go get me copies of my book in which we talk about this topic that they've asked about. Mm. And he's sitting like this, facing the crowd. I'm sitting to his right, kind of on an angle. So I don't have my back to him, but I also don't have my back to the crowd. And I'm just waiting for him to give the rest of the sentence. And I turn around finally and I look at him, and he's got his eyes closed. He's sitting in meditation. And I realized in that moment that he actually wanted me to answer the question, that it wasn't Sadhviji, comma, it was Sadhviji, period. It was like, you answer this. And he then went into this beautiful state of deep meditation. And, you know, I had been doing public speaking already, but it was public speaking where I had time to prep in advance. I knew the topic. I knew how long I'd be speaking. I knew the audience. I knew all of that. And here we were with this group in front of us, and I've got to answer on the spot. And so I close my eyes and I start trying to arrange my thoughts. Like, what am I going to say? What's the right way to begin? What are the points I'm going to make? And as anybody who's ever tried to think under pressure and stress knows, it doesn't work. And the stress just makes it worse. And so suddenly all of the ideas that I had just are flying around in my brain. It's like this tornado in my brain, and I cannot grasp any of it. And I then decide, okay, this is just a trick. He's just playing a trick on me. Obviously, he's going to answer the question. He wouldn't throw me in the deep end like this. And so I open my eyes and I look over at him. And his eyes are still closed. He's still deep in meditation. Like, there's no bailing me out. And I then close my eyes again. And I bow to him in my mind. And I say, I am so sorry. I don't have it in me. I mean, my whole mind was blank, but a very stressful blank, not a very happy, mindful, spacious, meditative emptiness. It was just a complete stress-filled blank. And so I bow to him and say, I'm so sorry. I don't have it in me. You've asked this of me. I can't do it. I don't have it in me, and I'm so sorry. And I literally, in my mind, bowed to him. And I sit back up in my mind, and I open my eyes, fully prepared to just sit there in my shame of not having one coherent thing to say in response to this group that is sitting there staring at me. And as I open my eyes, I open my mouth gently, I think just to exhale or sigh, and words start to come. And words are flowing, and I'm talking, but I'm not talking. It doesn't feel like I'm making the words. And I'm looking out, and people are crying. There's tears pouring down their eyes. Eyes are filled with tears. And later on that evening, some people from the ashram said to me, God, I heard that you gave a great satsang today. What did you say? And I remember saying, I have no idea. Like, it just flowed through me. And what I learned, and that's, now almost 20 years ago, is that's the key. it was the recognition and the realization that the answers are not in me. It's not from me. It's not that I'm somehow manufacturing wisdom inside, but it's about getting out of the way so that the flow of the universe, so that the divine wisdom, that eternal wisdom that needs to be spoken, could just flow through. And that was kind of the beginning of satsang. And it used to be just really casual, sitting in his garden. And sometimes we'd do it, sometimes we wouldn't. Then shifted into a room, then shifted into a bigger garden, then shifted into a bigger hall. And it's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's now every evening when I'm there in Rishikesh.
Oh, yeah.
And it's such a beautiful blessing to be able to serve as that channel and as that vessel for answers to come through.
That's so great. But I love, and you talk about it in terms of what comes out beyond yourself, or what comes out of any of us in any kind of situation where we're sharing, is the deepest commitment to truth.
Yeah.
And that means that we don't have all the answers by any means, and we're just sharing together.
Well, satsang, the word satsang, literally means in the presence of truth.
Yeah.
So it's together we are deep diving into a truth that is the same for me, the same for you, the same for people thousands and thousands of years ago when Krishna spoke the truth to Arjuna on a battlefield in Kurukshetra that ended up giving us the Bhagavad Gita, or in Ayodhya, or in Lanka, or any place in India, or any place across the world where deep spiritual truth has been spoken. That truth is true for everyone, and it's true for all time. That's the eternal aspect of this capital T truth.
Yeah. Now, in the book, right at the front, or one of the first couple of chapters or parts, we talk about minds. You talk about minds. And it reminded me, Neem Karoli Baba said to some of us one day, "I've done everything for you. I leave you the mind." And we all went, "Oh, great."
Yeah.
So, but it is certainly, as you talk about it, in terms of its utilitarian use is very much part of our lives and a way for us to move forward.
Yeah.
And the other side of it is being attached to its great manipulation by virtue of us believing in thoughts and stories we tell ourselves.
Yes.
And talk a little bit. So these things, I understand now that I'm talking to you, these were all pulled, and you say it in the book, from these satsangs.
Absolutely. Yeah. The entire book of Come Home to Yourself is questions and answers, because what I saw was, and we'll come back to your question about the mind and thoughts and all of that, but what I saw was that as people came from all over the world, and as I traveled and spoke to people all over the world, the questions are really the same. And they're questions around essentially how we navigate this journey, this karmic journey of this physical human body here on planet Earth, but knowing that we are soul, knowing that we're consciousness, knowing that we're divinity, knowing that we are not separate from the divine, not separate from each other. And how do you deal with, the neighbors, or the office, or the family, or the errands, or just moving through the challenges of each day? And there were questions around so much around the mind, thoughts, emotions, patterns, questions around relationships, husband, wife, romantic relationships, family relationships, parents, kids, in-laws, etc. So many questions around right action and the role between that surrendering to the perfection of the divine and balancing that with standing up and doing our duty and engaging in right action and fulfilling our dharma. So, and questions around, finding purpose and peace and so much more. But that's the general gist of it. And they're questions that, of course, I had, and they're questions that people from all over the world have had. And what I've seen is when I found the answers, it transformed me and healed me very, very deeply on the inside. And as I've been able to serve as a vehicle through which the answers can come for other people, I've watched these lessons, these truths, these teachings that I've gotten in India heal and touch and transform other people, both those who come to India and those I have the beautiful blessing to be with all over the world. And so people started saying, well, it's great that we get to come to India, or it's great that we get to be with you in this particular city or state somewhere in the world. But you really should put these into a book so that everyone has access to it. So that's what Come Home to Yourself is it's the questions and the answers that arise, that continue to arise, that are about our life journey and really the best way to live it, to connect, to come into alignment. And as you asked about thoughts and the mind and kind of the mastery of that, it's so funny because if, as I sit here with you, if suddenly, my arms started flailing around like this, and of course, people only listening, not watching, can't see this, but just imagine that my arms are flailing all over the place. You'd think, oh, there's something wrong. And if I said, oh, Raghu, don't worry about that. That's just my crazy arms. They do that sometimes. You'd think she needs a doctor. Like there's something wrong. We intuitively understand that our arms, our legs should be under our control. And if they're not, that we need to get help, that is signaling an illness, a disease for which we need treatment. And yet our minds that actually are the steering wheels for our lives. So many of us are so content to essentially just give up and give in and say, yeah, that's my mind. It goes to anger. It goes to resentment. I get jealous all the time. I, have a short temper. And we don't gather the same agency, autonomy over our minds that we know that we need all over the rest of the body. And, you'd never buy a car without a steering wheel. And yet the mind is the steering wheel for our life. And so this is where our practices of mindfulness, of awareness, of meditation, of introspection are so important because they give us the tools to actually work with our mind. Our thoughts are vehicles and they take us places. And you'd never get on a bus going someplace you don't want to go, or you'd never get on a flight going where you don't want to go just because the plane is parked at the gate while you're sitting there. You understand, this isn't my flight. I'll wait for my plane.
Oh, God.
And yet thoughts come and we jump on them, even though they're taking us places we don't want to go.
There's a great quote from, do you know who Annie Lamott is, the writer?
I have heard of her, yes.
Yeah, she's great. She does retreats with us and stuff.
Oh, wonderful.
She's got really funny quips. One is, my mind is like a bad neighborhood. I try not to go there at night.
Yeah.
Is that great?
Yeah. It's a wonderful quote. And it certainly not only can be the bad neighborhood, but it can be the car, the bus, the plane takes you there. And you could be in a great neighborhood, and then suddenly a thought vehicle of anger, of resentment, of jealousy, of judgment, of attachment, of longing, of something like that, it arises. And without looking at it, I mean, a bus pulls over and you would look, what is the bus number? What does the sign say where the bus is going? Or the plane is at the gate. You're going to make sure, hey, this is my flight. But these thought vehicles, they arise into our mind. We jump on them. And then we wonder why we are miserable. Because we keep getting on these vehicles to misery. And that's where that, first, the level of awareness is so important. And then a level of knowing you actually have conscious control. The slightest bit of working with the mind, working with a mantra, working with chanting, japa, kirtan, prayer, anything, it shows us that we actually do have the power to put our mind where we want it to be for a certain period of time. And then, of course, it's going to get distracted, whether it's half a second later or 5 seconds later. And then you bring it back. But even holding it in that place for just half a second or 5 seconds makes us know, oh, I can do that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's in my hands. Like, I can choose to have this thought or not. And it just requires that level of conscious awareness of continuing to bring the mind back to where you want it to be, not getting on these thought vehicles, and remembering that just because a thought has arisen between my two ears does not make it true. A lot of us live in this misconception that just because I thought it, it's true.
How about this? I love people because, we recommend, meditation is certainly a part of all the practices that we offer through what we've done with Ram Dass all these years and Jack Kornfield and all the other people we're close to. And then you hear people go, well, it's just not for me because it's just the thinking that goes on. It's just endless. And I'm too lost. So, as if this person is singular.
Yes.
In this.
Welcome to the human package deal.
Yeah. And that's, let's go back to Satsang, where we have a community who have one pointed together to transform all of what we're speaking to.
Yes.
And in that community, you start to realize, that's why it's wonderful what you're doing, of course, in Rishikesh, and we do a lot of live things around the country and so on in a similar way. And people start to feel comfortable about this.
Absolutely.
They're not thinking they're the only one.
Yeah. What I love is in the Buddhist tradition, the core fundamental foundation prayer that they chant is Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. I take refuge in the Buddha, the awakened one, in the awakening and awakened state. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. I take refuge in the Dharma, the teachings, the truth, the wisdom, the path, the way. And Sangam Sharanam Gacchami. I take refuge in the Sangha, in the community. And it's amazing because it's just a 3-line prayer. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami, Sangam Sharanam Gacchami. And you think, well, obviously the Buddha is the main thing and the teachings of the Buddha, but that out of just a 3-point program, the Sangha, the community, is that third pillar, makes you really realize how critically important our community is.
Yep.
You know, it's funny because I just finished, just 2 days ago, I got back into Los Angeles before heading back to India after a 30-day plus tour, a book tour for Come Home to Yourself. And when the book was going to come out and I was talking to the publishers and I mentioned I was doing a book tour, they were like, book tour? You know, nobody does book tours anymore. You don't have to do a book tour. And I said, no, I actively want to, because the book is just, it's a tool, it's an instrument. I certainly pray that it touches and inspires and uplifts and heals and guides people all over the world. And what we need so much is to be in community. And so I really wanted to use the book as a way to come into community because, you know, we're busy. And having a new book is a beautiful excuse to say, oh, hey, there's a new book. Let's gather. Oh, there's a new book. Let's have an event. Oh, there's a new book. Let's have satsang. And so I've been all over the country in this super fast-paced schedule. My assistant was joking and saying it's Sadhviji's punk rock tour without the music, without the booze, and without the drugs, but literally that type of high-speed travel, because I've been so called to be part of and to help create in-person community where people aren't simultaneously listening to a meditation and doing 5 other things, where they can't scroll away from it after 30 seconds when the mind wanders, but where they actually are there in that beautiful energetic field with other people. And as you said, benefiting so beautifully from knowing, oh, hey, I'm not the only one whose mind is wandering. Oh, hey, yeah, this question that I'm struggling with. So are the people around me. Like that guy just asked my question. And it's so critical and so powerful.
Well, and the Buddha, as you mentioned, the 3 refuges, and his close disciple Ananda came to him and said, so out of the 3, what is the most important? And Buddha said, what do you think? And he said, Sangha. And Buddha said, that is more than true. However, he said that is the most important of the 3.
Wow, I didn't know that part of the story. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So, there's many, you've listed many of the ways of the practices that help us to be able to transform ourselves into believing, just starting with this, into believing our thoughts and the stories we tell ourselves in our minds, and the projections and the resistance and all of it, you know, the reactivity, particularly when phenomenon comes in. And here you talk about changing habits of thought. I mean, this is something that now science has proved out, neuroscience, that we can rewire our brains. Talk a little bit about that, Sadhviji.
Yeah, it's super exciting. You know, when I was studying neurology 35 years ago, it was believed that once the brain had fully myelinized, when the myelin sheaths along the axons were fully done, which is a process in brain development that happens typically late adolescence. It could be as late as early 20s, but it's always done by then. That once that process had happened, the brain no longer could be changed. And so if you were working with anyone who was older than an adolescent, or at the oldest, somebody in their early 20s, there was no way to change their actual brain. Whatever issues they had, whatever pathologies they had, were ingrained in them forever. And really the best that we could do was help them learn to understand them, to manage them, maybe give them some medicine, because through the medicine we could change their brain chemistry. Mm-hmm. And that's where actually, it's a quick diversion, that's where my interest in pediatric neuropsych had come in, because my feeling was, oh, well, if the brain can't be changed after myelinization, then I'm much more interested in working with kids where the brain is actually still malleable. Yeah. I don't want to just learn to give out medicine or teach people to manage their symptoms. I want to actually work with change. And if only children can change, then I want to work with children. Mm-hmm. But in the last now few decades, neurology has come a full 180 degrees. And we now know that not only can the brain be changed, but that so much of what we do changes our brain. I mean, even on just a basic level, if you take two of your fingers, your first finger and your middle finger, or your thumb and your first finger, and you tape them together and you walk around like that for a week, your brain will change. If you take your dominant arm and you put it in a sling and you don't use it and you have to use your non-dominant arm for a week, your brain will change. Not just the muscles in the arm, but actually the brain. So we now have tons of evidence that meditation changes our brains. Yoga changes our brains. Deep breathing changes our brains. Working with mantra, with sound, changes our brains. All of the practices that the sages and the yogis and the rishis and the mystics gave us thousands of years ago. This is stuff that actually changes your brain. And so when we have patterns of thought, patterns of behavior, patterns of reaction that we call sanskaras in the Sanskrit spiritual world, but we call neural networks or neuronal patterns in the scientific world, they can be changed. Just because you think in a certain way today doesn't mean that you have to think like that forever, but it means that you need to lay down a new network, a new pattern. And that's really how we work with these unhelpful, unskillful patterns of thought, is we build new ones. And it's literally like, if you can think about a river cutting through a canyon, and a river keeps running through the same canyon, it's going to make the canyon deeper and deeper and deeper. But if you divert the river and you start running it through a different area, slowly, 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 the new area is going to create a canyon. It's going to get deeper and deeper. And the original canyon, if there's no water running through it, is slowly over time going to actually build up. Flora and fauna, soil, plants, etc., will all start actually filling in that land. And the same thing happens in the pathways of our brain. As we lay new networks. So the old networks eventually just get integrated back into the brain, and they no longer become our default channels or our default patterns.
Yeah. And of course, we all get to this place by virtue of the conditioning which you speak to that goes on in our lives from the point that we are come into the world and get that identity, that name, me. Now I'm a me. And then it just, it falls through the roof after that. I did with a friend of mine, Duncan Trussell, we did an audio book called The Movie of Me to the Movie of We.
Beautiful.
And it was just, we used ourselves as examples of the conditioning from the earlier part of our lives, and then how we went through the transformation to become whole. And, and we so discovered, I actually remembered this particular talk Ram Dass gave. So I was trying to figure, okay, what's the what is the payoff at the end of what we're trying to do to give people an idea of how this transformation could take place. And there was something that he did around transformation, which had to do with service.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And there was a whole story of someone going through the fear of being compassionate to somebody, a homeless person. It was just fantastic, and we used it at the end. But and you talk about this the most importantly, in service to others, I have discovered the fullness within myself, not from the perspective of one who has serving those who don't, nor a humanitarian serving the masses, but service of self to self. If you trip and injure your right leg, your left leg will pick up the extra weight. That is the premise of it.
Yes.
And that is what we were given when we were with Neem Karoli Baba in the early 70s. And it was love, serve, remember. That's all we got. That was the only instructions, because he didn't talk, he didn't give talks or anything like that. And that's the name of the foundation that we have now, that we put together for this continuing Ram Dass and Maharaji's legacy. But certainly service. You just stop thinking about yourself as soon as you start thinking about someone else, right?
Well, it's said seva, which is the selfless service, is a way, and in many cases it's seen as the most powerful way, of purifying the mind. In fact, in the yogic philosophies and principles and traditions as they intersect with the spiritual ones, when you speak about the mind is said to have basically three main problems, three main diseases. And I won't go into all of that now, but one of the three is something called mal, which is just the Hindi word for basically junk. And it's just the fact that our mind is filled with...
Wait, I don't know that word. I want to know.
Yeah. Mal, M-A-L-A, mal. Yeah.
Ah.
And it means basically junk. And it's just, like in Hindi, if you were talking to somebody, you would just say, get this mal out of here. It's waste, it's junk, it's nonsense, it's useless stuff.
Bakar butt. That's good.
And so mal is one of the main diseases of the mind. And the treatment for the mal of the mind, the junk, the nonsense, the meaningless garbage that just fills it up, is actually seva. It's karma yoga. It's using every moment, every action as a way to be a channel, to be an instrument. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks about nimit matram bhav, and it's that feeling of being an instrument in God's hands. It's just like the prayer of Saint Francis of Assisi. Oh Lord, let me make me an instrument of thy grace, an instrument of thy mercy. Same thing. So seva, that service, it's not about me who has serving you who don't, but it's about, in this lifetime, in this intersection of time and space, you on some cosmic karmic level agreeing to play the role of someone who doesn't have, so that I can play the role of someone who does. And so that through the playing of that role, I can actually learn to see the divine in you, to see my capital S self in you.
Yeah. That can only happen if you're not identified with that little me guy, gal.
Exactly. Which is why it's considered yoga. That's why it's called karma yoga. Karma means action. Yoga literally means union. And so karma yoga is the utilization of every action to get closer and closer and closer to the reunion rather, of individual self with supreme self. And it's also that action which is predicated upon the awareness of union and oneness. So seva is that way of doing karma yoga, letting every action, it's not about, first Saturday of every month, I volunteer for 3 hours.
Yeah.
It's about every minute, every moment, just how can I offer this action? And there's beautiful mantras in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna's teaching us and explaining to us how to literally offer every action back to the divine. So we're serving, we're working, but it's not about us. It's not about us in the role of, the one who serves. It's about the divine moving through us in this way, moving through others in a different way, and each of us having the opportunity to experience the truth of us in seeing the other.
Yeah. And, listen, it's going to take a lot for all of us to have that junk be cleared out so that we can purely serve others. And that, as you say, doesn't mean going down to the homeless encampment on Saturdays. It means every moment of just being aware of there's nothing else to do in front of you except, like, you see someone trip and drop groceries, it's automatic. You just automatically go. Yeah. You don't go, oh, well, bad karma.
Right. And you also don't go, oh, this can be my random act of kindness.
Yeah, right.
And check that off my list today.
Yeah, got that going. Oh, God, yeah. Wow, we could go on. So great to have you, Sadhvi. It really is.
So wonderful to be with you. Really so wonderful with you and the whole community.
Thank you. And we will have all of the wonderful links in the show notes, everybody, so you can be linked to Sadhvi's books and the ashram in Rishikesh if you're there. It's a great place to go. I actually have not walked in. Next time I'm going to walk in,
Yes.
I pass by it a lot, but I'm to walk in. It's an extraordinary place. And we will see you all next time. You can go to BeHereNowNetwork.com/mindrolling and then also take advantage of all the other great, exceptional beings from Alan Watts to Ram Dass to Jack Kornfield and on. And again, thank you. Namaste.